Uber says, oh, there's 70 different factors that factor into the fare. Why the hell would you need 70 different factors? And really, it comes down to two things: time and distance. That's what you got paid as a taxi cab driver.
In that video over at the Rideshare Guy, Chris makes what I think is a fairly solid argument why we should go back to rate cards as Uber and Lyft drivers. It makes sense, but I have some questions and thoughts and pushback. Hi, my name is Levi Spires. This is the Tip You in the App Daily Drive podcast. Today's Daily Drive is brought to you by the Gig You app. Now, I really don't disagree with Chris. I understand exactly where he's coming from. He's like, listen, why is it so complex? It's a pretty simple gig, getting people from point A to point B. And for almost 100 years between taxis and when Uber and Lyft first started, there was a rate card. It wasn't until they came up with this idea of upfront pricing that things changed, and this dynamic pricing, both for the passenger and for the driver, it got really convoluted. I mean, 70 some odd parameters to set a fare to the driver. It seems like overkill. And I understand where Chris is coming from, and a rate card potentially would make things more simple. I think though we should probably remember how we got here though as drivers. When I first started driving, right around COVID started, we had a rate card. There was like a base fare of like 70 cents, and then it was like 30 cents per mile or minute. I can't remember what it was, but I ended up making, a rate card. So every time I took a trip, I got paid the same amount per mile and per minute. And it made sense. And then the only thing though is it was, I wasn't really sure where I was going. It would be like the trip was like 5 miles to the north or 10 minutes to the south, or it was some sort of, they didn't really tell you what the trip was. And I can imagine it's probably similar to the way a taxi might work. You're driving down the street in a taxi cab, circa 1960 or whatever, and somebody waves you down. And so you pull over and they get in the car and they're like, take me to, Fifth Avenue, take me to Macy's on Fifth Avenue or whatever. And you're like, man, you go driving off. And the meter starts going. But you don't know where you're going until that person gets in the car and tells you. And that's kind of the way it used to work for us as drivers. You'd be like, okay. And then as long as they're sitting in the car, the meter's running and I'm making a flat rate. But we didn't know where we were going, and we were frustrated by that as drivers. And there was a lot of complaints. And so Uber and Lyft came up with the solution of the, upfront fare. Hey, listen, here's a fare. It's $7 and it's going to be umpteen minutes and umpteen miles. Take it or leave it. Or it's going to be $22 and umpteen minutes, umpteen miles, and take it or leave it. And so now we know how much we're going to get paid, but we don't know the rate in which we're going to get paid. So there are good trips and bad trips. And we would say there are even great trips. There are cherries, right? There are perfect trips. And where we're going to get paid a lot of money per mile, per minute. So there are trips where we can make barely minimum wage, and there are trips where we can make $50, $60 an hour after our expenses. So we're out there playing a game now as drivers, trying to pick the best trips to make the most amount of money, as opposed to just taking trips. And that's Uber's problem. And that's what Chris says in the video. He's like, Uber's created this problem with acceptance rate, and same with Lyft. Drivers are now kind of picking and choosing. We're driving by, in that scenario of the passengers on the side of the road waving their hands. We're driving right by them because we know what we're going to get paid. And we're like, that one's not good. That one's not good. That's the one I want to take. And drivers are trying to cherry pick the passengers on the side of the road. And that's not a good experience for Uber or Lyft. That's the problem. And the solution that Chris proposes is the rate card. Now, I want to push back on that. Not because I disagree with Chris. I understand it. And I have a solution that I want to present at the end. But let's push back a little bit on why a rate card might be bad. Okay. The first thing, not all cities are the same. Not all locations are the same. Towns, neighborhoods, none of them are the same. So obviously there's not going to be a nationwide rate card. There will be low rate cards for locations, which makes sense so far. But that's one of the 70 parameters I imagine that Uber is putting into their calculations. That's one. even here in the city of Syracuse, there are places that probably have a higher premium of pay, let's say the airport over picking up at the mall. That's just an example. Now, not all cars are equal. One of the things about like when we see a New York City cab in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, even now, they're all pretty similar. They're like today, they're almost all like Toyota hybrid, Camrys or maybe the Highlander or was the RAV4. But back in the day, they used to be all 57 Chevys. Then they were, for a long time, they were like these big sedans. The cars were all the same for the most part. Even today, if you were to get into a car with a rate cap, but that's not the way rideshare works. There are hundreds, if not thousands of different varieties of cars. And then when you consider the quality of the car being maintained is maintained by an individual, not by a company. And so a yellow cab experience at a rate makes sense. But you could order UberX and get who knows what's going to show up as far as quality of the car. It could be a brand new Toyota Camry in perfect condition with black leather interior, just really a comfortable ride versus a broken down Toyota Prius or something like that. That's got 250,000 miles on it and the muffler's dragging. You just don't really know. So the cars are not the same. The third thing that comes to my mind, and this matters a lot too, is not all drivers are the same. Some drivers are really, really good at their job. They know how to treat passengers with high levels of customer service. They're safe in the way they drive. They navigate the city really well. They can hold a conversation or they can be really quiet. They can load luggage. Who knows? There's great, they maintain their car. They keep it clean. They play appropriate music, whatever it might be. They don't even smell bad. They smell good, right? So the level of driver is different. And then quite frankly, there are drivers that have maybe more time in the job. So should a driver that's brand new, they're taking their very first ride, get the exact same pay as a driver who's been doing it for 10 years and has like 25,000 rides in their 5-star drivers? So drivers are not the same. So the cities, the cars, the drivers, none of them are the same. So that's a little bit of a pushback, but I got some more. Let me get more deeper into this. Surge and dynamic pricing. I think this is probably the most compelling reason against giving drivers the exact same fare, a rate card, is because we want to make more money when there's more demand or when there's less supply of driver, when there's a surge opportunity, whether that's a surge, we see that on the map, or that the passenger is paying more because there's a demand surge. That's the cherries. Well, so surge still happened, I think, when we had rate cards to some extent. So that's another factor of dynamic pricing. So I'm going back to Uber's claim, and I don't know where Chris found this, but whatever it is, I'm going to agree with it. They have 70 factors of why a fare might go to a driver at a certain thing. I can imagine it's pickup time and distance. It's drop off time and distance. It's maybe the driver's rating, pro status maybe. It could be the quality of the car that they're driving. It could be the time of day. It could be the surge. It could be locations. So you can start to see reasoning and why Uber might have a lot of criteria. Now, I've only mentioned 4 or 5. They're saying 70, but it could be that their idea of 70 could be variants of those. I think upfront pricing introduces choice. Would I take a rate card over seeing the total fare or flat fee? I would rather have choice. That's the benefit of upfront pricing. If I work for a taxi company, I was going to get paid the same amount on every ride. I'm going to go into ant mode, right? I'm just going to go around taking every single trip, which solves Uber's acceptance problem. But now we're all paid the same. And I think what's really interesting about this conversation about a rate card is the drivers who I respect that are really, really good. They're really good at cherry picking. They've got certain secret spots where they know they can make more money. And they have a 1% acceptance rate. And they're like, look at me, I'm making a killing because I have a 1% acceptance rate. that doesn't make any sense for them to propose a rate card. A rate card really benefits the person with the high acceptance rate. You're just going to drive around, take everything that you're going to get. So choice. It's nice having knowledge of the trip. So maybe there could be a solution where there's a rate card with that information, but I like knowing this trip is going to pay me $22 and I know where it's going. Now, because I'm experienced and I could calculate using GigU, the app, and I know where those locations are. I'm like, that's a good trip. And I can use my own discernment on what makes me the most amount of money. It gives me the opportunity to not necessarily be here. I can be here in terms of my level of income, not here, right? It stratifies us naturally. Okay. So that's the case for the driver to not have a rate card. Now, again, I'm not disagreeing with Chris, and I'm going to give my solution here at the end of the video. I want to push back to make sure, is that what we really, really want? Because there was a time when we did have a rate card and there was problems with that too. And now we know that Uber is hiding and masking things in there, especially they're overcharging some passengers and they're lowballing some drivers, and that's how they make their margin. This is going to sound bad to some of you guys, but I understand why Uber's doing that, charging passengers more and then low paying some other people. That's making that margin is how all businesses work. I'm going to give you another example. Has nothing to do with Uber for a second. Then we're going to go back to Uber or Lyft or whatever. When I produced videos for clients, I don't do that anymore, but I used to do it. I used to charge people, not a flat rate. I would charge them based upon the value of the video that I would produce. How much money would that bring them? I should get a percentage of that because not all videos are the same. Example being this. Imagine if a local band comes to you, you're a video producer, and they're like, hey, we're kind of up and starting, make a music video for us. I might charge them $1,000 because they're just a local band. And, I'm going to use let's say the equipment and the quality of the song and all are going to be the same. But if Jay-Z came to me, or I'm picking out my favorite rappers or Kanye West or whoever, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, it's $150,000 to make a video for you. Or maybe, I don't know, $250,000 to make a video for you, because the value of that video is, they're going to make so much more. Now, I'm not trying to rip them off. I just know the value of the video. The video, not all videos are the same. It's just like not all cars and all drivers are the same. Nothing is the same. So I can charge more. Here's another example. If you went to go buy beer at the grocery store, a case of Bud Light, and I always use this example, a case of Bud Light. You go to buy that beer and you have a coupon, you go into the grocery store, it can be really cheap to buy a case of that beer, especially if you get dented cans or something like that. Now, if you were to buy that same beer, let's say 12 ounces of beer versus a case of beer, but buy a case of beer of the volume of beer at the Super Bowl, the price per ounce would be absurd because it's the experience of the beer at the location, right? That's the same thing that Uber is doing with their pricing. They know the value, and I don't know how they do it, but they know the value of that ride is different for each passenger. And it's not just surge pricing. It's just like that passenger needs a ride more and they're willing to pay more based upon whatever criteria that Uber is putting into there. And we're talking about just the basic Uber X. We're not talking about a quality car or anything like that. That person doesn't feel ripped off. If you went to the Super Bowl and you bought a beer, you don't feel ripped off. If I charged Kanye West $250,000 to make a music video and he doesn't feel ripped off. Now, he might feel ripped off if the video is bad, and the passenger might feel bad if the Uber experience is bad. But the value of that ride is different for different people. And so Uber has found a way to dynamically price those things. We can agree or disagree whether that's morally right or wrong, but that's how everything works. Airline prices. If you go to buy a ticket for an airline seat, nobody's going to see the same price. If you were to go to hotel rooms, depending on what app you use to rent a hotel room or to stay in a hotel, it's all different pricing. It would be hard for businesses to make margin if all they could do is charge the same amount all the time. Then they'd have to focus on volume. And maybe that's a solution for Uber, just like all UberX pricing is this, period. But then what about surge pricing? And how can they charge it, but how do we know they're being honest about their surge pricing? So that's a real interesting thing. So, and I understand why some drivers take low ball offers. I do it all the time. I take low ball offers, not because that particular ride I'm trying to get paid the least on, but a lot of the times I'm trying to get paid an amount to get to places I want to go. So I'm sitting out here in a dead spot. I can drive back empty, or I can take a trip that I know that will pay me something to get to the place I want to go. Or maybe, like recently, I've been trying to complete quests. Well, if I'm trying to complete quests, sometimes the lowball offers help me at my numbers. And this weekend, I did $560 in revenue in one Saturday just doing Uber Eats, taking lowball offers. If I tried to take the max offer, I wouldn't have hit the quest and I probably would have made less money. And I understand the frustration we as drivers. You're like, why are you taking those lowball offers? You're allowing Uber to set those. We all have our own judgment and our own choice to take the trips that we want to take or not take. So I don't judge any driver for taking the trips that they want to take. Take them. I'm cool with that. It doesn't matter to me. So here's the final thing. What's my solution to this? Because right now it feels as a driver unfair. Like, why is this trip priced the way it is? We don't know. We don't know why we're getting paid what we're getting paid. We see all this information from the passengers verified to a surge amount to, oh, you get a 5% bonus if you're a platinum driver or whatever those things might be. But none of it, that calculation, none of it makes sense. And that's what's really frustrating as a driver. But a rate card simplifies a business and puts Uber in a bind and probably puts drivers in a bind where we become ants. And it hurts Uber's ability to make margins. So some sort of dynamic pricing is a solution for both drivers and for the apps. My solution is simple, and it kind of piggybacks off of Chris's idea. A rate card, but we, you, me, the driver, we set the rate card. We set our own individual rate cards. Here's how much I want to get paid. Don't send me any trips that don't meet these criteria, because I'm not going to take them. I don't want to see them. If I could just go into the app and just set my own rate card, now we can all operate with like every single trip that comes in. I know it's going to pay me the rate that I want or more, maybe. That's the simple solution. So if you're the cherry picker with the 1% acceptance rate, and I support that, I get that. Okay, set your rate at, I don't know, $60 an hour and $4 a mile. And then maybe 1 out of every 100 rides will pay you that. And then you can set your own rate. Same thing with other ant drivers. Hey, I'm going to set my rate card pretty low, $1 a mile, and, I don't know, whatever, I want to make $30 an hour or whatever it is. And I want to turn the app on and just go around and I know what I'm going to make. Fair. Like, we could all set our own rate cards, and the apps have the ability to do that. I don't think the apps want to do that because there are things that complicate things for them. This is the natural tug and pull, this conflict between all three entities. The passenger wants to pay the least amount of money. Uber wants to charge them the most, but pay us the least. And we want to make the most amount of money that we can. We're all three going in different directions. We're not in agreement, in alignment. And that's natural to economics. I would love to make $1,000 an hour as an Uber driver, right? But we know market forces won't pay that. So we're talking about market forces within this range of what society thinks a driver should make. And Uber, because they're the biggest game in town right now, they're kind of dictating everything. But I want choice. I want flexibility. I'm kind of okay with the system the way it is. I would love to know, as an economist, as an accountant, as a driver, I would love to know, why does Uber pay me what they pay me on this trip. I don't know. How'd they calculate that? It would be great. I've taken hundreds of screenshots of rides and put them into different spreadsheets, and I can't estimate how they came up with the fare. I just don't know. And they have 70 different criteria. So I'd probably need like 10,000 trips within the city of Syracuse before I can finally figure out, oh, that's how they calculate these fares. But even still, let's say I know that number. Does that change my strategy? Probably not. There are times when I go out and I just take the trips that I want to take because I'm trying to go get my car washed. And it doesn't really matter to me what I get paid. Then there are times when I want to do a 12-hour shift and I want to max out a quest. Then there are times I want to cherry pick rides. I want to take really big, high paying fares, and I only want to take 4 or 5 rides for the day. I'm willing to make a little bit less money on certain things. I want to make more on other. I want choice. And kind of right now, I do have choice. That's the best part of the employment status. And I know we're not employees, but what I'm saying is the work status as independent contractors, as Uber and Lyft drivers or DoorDash or whatever gig that you take, is I can work when I want to work and not work when I don't want to work. I can take the trips I want to take and not take the trips I don't want to take. And with upfront fares, at least I know how much I'm going to get paid. Before, I didn't even know. Now I'm like, oh, now I know what I'm going to get paid. And I think the perfect solution for us drivers, which probably won't be implemented, but it'd be cool, I could just set my own rate. Because sometimes I'll set my rate really low because I just want to stay busy. And sometimes I can set my rate really high because honestly, I just want to take a couple of quick trips. Whatever, it doesn't matter. And we could all be individual contractors. So Chris did a great job explaining the problem. Again, watch his video. I like the idea of a rate card. I know where he's coming from. I just think that the business is much more dynamic, that a simple rate card doesn't solve the problem, and that we're really trying to solve. And I don't know what would solve the problem from your end. If you're a viewer, if you've watched this all the way through here to the end, let me know. Is a basic rate card what we should get? Should we have dynamic pricing? Is dynamic pricing fair, unfair? Dynamic fares paid to drivers, is it fair, unfair? Do you want to go back to a rate card? Let me know your thoughts on this. Drivers for 2025 or 2026, it's 2026. I want you to have fun. I tell you, for a little while there, I was just getting beat down by that business. I was getting into a grind. And so now I'm having more fun. I'm actually picking trips based upon my level of enjoyment, not necessarily just how much money I can make off of each trip. And it's been pretty good. I hope you're safe, healthy, and happy. I hope you enjoy the ride. I hope you make a lot of money. My name is Levi Spires, and I'm cheering for you. Be well. Bye.